So what do I think COVID-19 is going to bring to us, the watch industry, and the watch industry watchers? So what do I think is going to happen to us as watch enthusiasts and to the watch industry that we watch? I don't think it's going to make dramatic changes. I'm not looking forward to like huge shifts in the market or how things operate. What I think the COVID-19 is going to do is really accelerate. It's going to catalyze reactions which are already underway and push them forward a lot faster. So the first of those is I think we're going to see an even faster acceleration of the prices of watches and the move to higher end, more luxury watches. Now that runs directly counter to what a whole bunch of other people and other YouTubers are saying. They're all talking about how in times of stress, in times of hardship, the first thing to go is luxuries. They are absolutely true, except in one little way, and that is in what you define a luxury as. The point is, whenever we have these really big crises, the really rich, the 1%, they don't suffer. They kind of make out like bandits. And all of the research that's coming out at the moment is showing that that is the case. That's one of the reasons why, if you do look at the exports and the impact on exports from the Swiss watch industry right now, what you see is huge falls, 50-60% falls at the very bottom end. 30-40% falls in that 500 francs to 2,000-3,000 francs, and you see 1 and 2% falls in the 3,000, 4,000 francs and above section. And then even then, if you look into that section, what you see is 20% falls in volume of those really more expensive watches, but only 5 to 10% falls in the value of those watches. So what that's telling you is, even at the kind of high end of where they measure, it's only really the bottom end that's taking a hit. The really expensive watches, they're still selling. And I think that just really reinforces something that's been happening for a couple of years, which is the bottom is being scooped out of that industry, of our industry, that it's maybe being replaced in part with some micro brands, but in general, the big players are getting out of that space and are moving north. This pandemic is going to accelerate that move. Again, being a little bit controversial and going against the tide, I think what the pandemic has shown us is that the trade show is bigger, is going well and is bigger and better than ever before. But what it's also showing us is that consumers can suck it. That in the past there was 1 or 2 trade shows. There was Basel World plus 1 or 2 others. Now, right now, I'm counting there's going to be in 2021 somewhere between 6 and 10 trade shows. But they are strictly trade shows. They are strictly shows where the OEMs and the manufacturers talk primarily to themselves, to their leadership, to their management structures, to their distribution chains, maybe to the media, maybe to some high-end clients, but primarily we just get to sit on the sidelines and watch this electronically. So by my count, next year we'll have Watches and Wonders, some Swatch show, at least one, maybe more LVMH shows. We're going to have the Rolex Flex thing. We have Movado at Davros. As a minimum, and we still haven't figured out what Seiko and what the Japanese brands are going to do. I've got no idea what the German brands are going to do. So if Seiko does their own thing, that takes us up to 7. If Citizen and Casio do something, that takes us up to 8 or 9. If the Munich show builds because some of the Germans pile into that, that takes us up to 9 or 10 shows next year. Again, what this has shown is not that the trade show is dead, but rather that the trade show is more about the manufacturers talking to the trade and less about them talking to us. And speaking of us, our engagement is going to become much more online. Adrian's already covered this really well in his post-shower video, and I agree with pretty much everything he said, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of it. I think the Breitling press release for their new watches, now put aside what you think of the watches, I think that was almost as good as it gets. I think right now that is probably the single best electronic launch I have seen of a watch by anyone. Where I would see it going next is perhaps some level of, albeit heavily moderated, interactivity. I think what would have really made that a slam dunk of a press release would have been upon issue of that summit video that they did, they roll straight into a Q&A session with, say, Hodinkee and a blog to watch and so forth, and then put that on the back of it almost immediately, so that the mere consumers looking on the outside get to feel that we have some sort of even more interactivity. There's someone sort of doing that thing. I think that's the next step. Curiously, since Adrian did his and I'm doing this, Watches and Wonders has gone electronic. I don't think that's been anywhere near as successful, albeit, look, to be fair, they're doing a much larger show, much more to cover, but I don't, personally, as someone on the outside coming in, I found it pretty hard to access the material I want. So I think in doing it for a small launch, relatively easy to control, trying to do this for an entire show is clearly something that we're struggling with. I don't think Watches and Wonders has got that yet. Okay, so moving offline into in real life and actual watches, I don't think that what I'm going to talk about here is the sales slump and its impact on prices. And in short, I don't think it's going to have the effect that people expect it or even hope it to have. Or maybe that should be the other way around. What I would say is over the last 2 years, if you go back and look at the corporate reports of pretty much every watch company, they have mentioned the fact that they are going to try and attack the grey market. If you look at the sales of watches over the last, or the shipments of watches over the last couple of years, you will see I think there's a consistent trend of constraining supply. So I think coming into this, there was already an intention to wind back on production and not have as many watches in the market. Paradoxically, I think that has probably positioned people really well for this pandemic. And so what you're seeing is people not releasing watches and instead, I think there's two reasons for that. One is that they don't want to dump watches in a time where there's probably not a lot of sales going. But two, this is a good opportunity for them to run down inventories more slowly than have to dump old stock because you've got new stock coming. So for both of those reasons, I think it's unlikely you're going to get the kinds of drops that people are almost demanding. If you look at some of the comments, people are on some threads, people are almost angry that their ADs aren't throwing watches at them. Like I said, I don't think that's going to happen. And the final thing I'd say is that this pandemic has effectively killed Hong Kong as a major hub anyway, for the re-export of Swiss watches. I think that we already saw that coming. Videos by me and some other people looking at what was happening with the Hong Kong riots. You could see huge amounts of volume being diverted to direct to Tokyo, direct to Shanghai, direct to Singapore. There was increases into shipments into Vietnam and shipments into other countries. I think that has accelerated even more during the COVID-19 virus. So I don't think it will die. I think we will continue to see Hong Kong as something of a supplier, a resupplier of Swiss watches. But frankly, their days as a bellwether of how the Swiss watch industry is going are well and truly behind it. The exports of We've gone from the days of you would look at imports into Hong Kong to figure out how well the Swiss watch industry is going. Now you look at exports of Swiss watches into Hong Kong to figure out how Hong Kong is doing. So that's it. That's my quick and dirty take on what I think COVID-19 is going to do to the watch industry. Nothing earth-shattering. It's really just an acceleration of things that were happening anyway. What do you think? Do you think I'm completely off base? Do you think it's going to change everything forever? I'd love to hear your comments below. So thanks very much. Bye.